Smiley faces.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Welcome. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
joining us.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. Oh, my slides have just... there we go. Oh, welcome, everybody. Hoping that you're comfy, that you've brought your brew with you. Fabulous. What time are we on? Joe, I'll let you let me know when there's everybody's joined.
Right, we don't have anybody waiting now, but there may be others that join a little after now. So
all right,
feel free to start.
Oh, thanks, Joe. Thank you. Let me just open the chat as well. There we go. Wonderful. Oh, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm hoping you're in the right place for the webinar for an introduction to coaching at work, having curious conversations. It's really nice of you to join us. We've got just under an hour together today for us to explore this topic. My name's Helen Smith. I work for a company called Boo Coaching and Consulting. I know I may have met some of you before with other bits of work and programs that we've done. So welcome. I am Director of People and Development with Team Boo. I'm also a coach and facilitator, and it's really nice to be able to join you this afternoon. Just before we start, we'll do a little bit of, in terms of housekeeping. If my slides will change. Yeah, so welcome. Could I just ask, just before we start, if you can just pop yourselves on mute, that would be really fab. There's a little bit of feedback, and when we've got so many people on it, sometimes tricky, so that's really helpful. So in terms of who we are at Team Boo, we are a consultancy that work around three key areas. We do work around coaching, around well-being, and around leadership, because essentially they're the three areas that we need to work on in order to help workplaces be the best that they can be, but essentially help people be the best that they can be as well. And so this is obviously to do with our coaching work. Can I just ask, if you've just joined, if you can just pop it down, if you help us.
That's all right. I did actually have one.
Thank you. That's really good. Really appreciate that. Yeah, so that's kind of the three key areas that we do. And obviously, as we're talking around this is obviously us thinking around coaching, but there's always an overlap between all three of the areas when we're thinking around coaching or leadership or well-being. So yeah, so we're a company that are based in Bolton in Greater Manchester, and we work nationally and internationally when we get the chance as well, spreading our joy and our learning around what we like doing and helping workplaces to be the best that they can be. In terms of today, if you've managed to avoid Teams for the past couple of years, then I need to know your secret. But we can see you. Oh, we're not on Teams. Oh, we're on Zoom. Same thing. We can see you and hear you. If you can keep yourselves on mute whilst I'm sharing the information, it just helps cut down on any background noise and any interference. Not because I don't value your opinions, but if you do want to say something, then let's, for today, seeing as there's several of us, let's stick with the chat feature. Pop things in the chat. And as well as myself keeping an eye on that, I know that we've got Joe and Tracy who'll keep an eye on that as well. I can't see there being anything today that we share that is massively confidential, but just in case, if we can agree to keep that confidentiality between us today in terms of what we talk about, that would be wonderful. Feel free to join us on social media. You can see that we are on Facebook, on Twitter and on Instagram. And sometimes people carry on bits of conversation there, so that would be lovely for you to join us on there as well. So let's get started. What are we talking about today? So our aim is to share some top tips and practical tools really that you can use to have coaching style conversations. As we're talking about this isn't training as a coach. This is about saying, how can we take some of those top tips, some of those practical tools and use some of those coaching skills within our conversations. So we're going to explore what coaching is, and also what it isn't, because sometimes there are some confusion around that. We're going to see what it takes to try out using a coaching approach in some of your conversations, whether that's with your teams, your colleagues, or wherever that might be. We're going to think about when to use a coaching style, and again, when not to, because we can't just blanket use it all of the time. It needs to be appropriate. And think about what could some of the impacts be in terms of using this coaching approach and coaching approach to conversations. So it's kind of a little bit of a dip your toe in the water, I guess, today, in terms of just finding out the beginnings of coaching and what's that all about. Please feel free as we go through to pop any questions in the chat, and share any reflections as well. And I will see if I can, if there's reflections as we're going through, I will bring them in where I can do. And as I say, there are other people who can also answer some of those queries as we go along as well. So I'll just get my slide to move. Here we go. So I wanted to introduce this to you, really, thinking about what is coaching, and sometimes people will say to me, what's the difference between coaching and mentoring, or isn't that counselling? And so I wanted us to explore that a little bit in terms of what that is and what that isn't. And you can see here, when we're thinking about coaching, counselling, mentoring, there is an overlap. That's why we've got them in a Venn diagram here. And that overlap is some of the core skills around coaching and counselling and mentoring, because of course the thing that we know about all three of those things is that they are to do with people, aren't they? they're a people thing, and so therefore there are going to be some overlaps. But the way that I share this with people and help people to understand it is that with counselling, let's start off with that first. So when we're looking at counselling, and I'm talking kind of broad brush stuff, I realise that counselling is very specialist in its own right. But counselling is generally helping somebody to overcome a barrier that already exists, helping them to, it might be something that keeps coming up, something that's happened in the past, something that they need to learn to resolve or navigate a way around it. And so counselling is always looking at what is it that's there. Yes, helping people move forward, but something that's already there. There's obviously lots of different types of counselling and depending on the situation, but obviously as a whole, that's what we're looking at. So when we've got that arrow at the bottom, we're looking back at something. It's something that's already there, something we're navigating our way around. In the top bit, you can see that we've got mentoring. Mentoring is about the here and now. It's about what is going on for somebody immediately. It's passing those skills on. So when I mentor somebody at work, so I mentor all of our facilitators that join us, and I mentor them to they're experienced facilitators, but we want to make sure that they have an understanding of how do we work at Boo, how do we do things, what do we do, what don't we do. And so I will mentor them, passing those skills on directly. There might be certain facilitation skills that they haven't got, so we'll need to mentor them. So it's saying, right, we do it like this, let me show you, now you give it a go yourself. So as we're mentoring, first of all, the person who is a mentor needs to have experience of the thing that you are talking about with the individual, because, and you are allowed to share your skills, share your, do you know what, I tried this and it worked like this, why don't you give it a go, see what works for you. It's passing those skills on. So the mentor needs to be skilled in the subject area. Coaching, we can see that the arrow is facing the other way, it's facing forwards this time. And coaching is always about a goal in the future, something that somebody wants to explore, something that somebody wants to achieve, a place that somebody wants to get to. And so when we're thinking about coaching, it's a slightly different angle. We're not telling people what to do. We're not saying, this is how I did it, so why don't you try it like that? And then let's, try out your own way. Actually, it's around about saying, well, helping the person to find their own solution. With coaching, people will say to me, do you need the experience? Do you need to understand what it is that somebody's talking about? And actually, no, you don't. So as a coach, gosh, I'm trying to think of some of the people that I've coached. Somebody was a finance director. Now, anybody that knows me will know I'm about as far away from finance director as you can probably get in terms of my skill set. It's just not something, not a job I would ever do. But I didn't need to be able to do that. If I was mentoring him, then yes, I would actually need to know about how does all of this work? How do we oversee and forecast budgets, and how do we monitor them, and all of that kind of thing. Because as a mentor, I'd be passing on that information, passing on those skills, helping them to reflect on that. As a coach, I don't need to do that. My job as a coach is to think about, well, what is it you'd like to achieve? What's going to help you to get there? What skills have you got? Helping people, holding a mirror up to people, I guess, creating that reflective space, and really noticing what's going on for people. Sometimes people can be receiving or experiencing more than one of these things at once. What can be tricky is if somebody is receiving coaching or partaking, not receiving, but partaking in coaching and also in counselling at the same time. Those arrows point in different directions. And you know yourself, you can't move forward at the same time as you can move back. And the same for our mind. If we are trying to think about what we are trying to achieve at the same time as looking back all the time, it can be really, really challenging. Can I just ask if anybody's not on mute, if you can just pop yourself on mute, please, just to cut down on any background noise, that'd be really helpful. Thank you. So yeah, if somebody is, sometimes with coaching, I might find out that there's something for somebody and kind of recognise that they need some counselling. So then we might pause the coaching while they do that, or sometimes they can complement each other. But be aware that for counselling, it is you need to be trained as a counsellor to be able to do it. So as a coach, I certainly couldn't be counselling somebody anyway. So we need to be clear on when we're having conversations with people, and particularly if those conversations, they might be quite informal conversations at work rather than formal coaching setup. Be aware of which space you are needed to be in, or the person needs someone to be in, and what it is, where it is that you think you are right now. So if they need a mentor, then yeah, great. If they need a coach, that's great. If they need counselling, we need to go and find somebody, that specialist service, and look at that. So hopefully that will give you some understanding of what that difference is between them all. Feel free, if you've got any questions around that, to pop them in the chat, and that's totally okay. Here's our coaching continuum. This continuum, gosh, there's lots of information on there, isn't there? But essentially, it's helping us recognise the difference between telling somebody and asking somebody. Okay, so telling somebody what to do. Often if I have a room full of people and we're able to be face to face with one another, then I will say to them, how many people have been told what to do? A lot of people go, oh no, I don't like being told what to do, thank you. And for a lot of us, we don't. I know for me, the more somebody tells me what to do, the more I'm either going to do the opposite or just ignore it. So we need to be really careful around that. But let's just have a little look at the bottom. We've got the push directive, or the telling people what to do. And when we're in this space, what we're doing is we are solving people's problems for them. So we're telling people what to do, or giving them instructions, or giving feedback, all those kind of areas where we're telling people, we're giving them the information. If we start to work our way up, we can see that we could move to offering guidance. So that's a little bit different from telling people what to do, but we're still offering that guidance or making suggestions around what somebody could do. Maybe giving feedback. So that's moving away from, I think you should do this, to saying, what I noticed was this, or this is, the feedback that I've got for what you're doing. Listening to understand and encourage reflection. This is starting to move the onus onto the other person, isn't it? For them to take responsibility for what they're doing, for what they're thinking, for what's going on for somebody. Asking questions to raise awareness. So again, that's the opposite. Again, telling people what to do, we're starting to say, well, what do you notice going on here? It gets people thinking and starting to work out things themselves. And then we've got summarizing and paraphrasing and reflecting. And finally, questions, asking questions to help the person to explore their options or to encourage solution finding. And suddenly we find ourselves at the other end of the continuum. This is the ask end, helping someone to solve their own problems, helping people to reflect on the questions and challenge themselves. And so we can see there's a very different approach here. For coaching, we firmly need to be up the top end, the ask end of this continuum. However, there are times where that isn't going to be helpful. There are times where we might need to tell people what to do, times that we might need to give the instructions, and the kind of times that that might be is maybe in an emergency. In an emergency situation, we need to tell people, we need to make sure that we're keeping people safe, that there's no harm done, that things happen really, really quickly. And the person in charge in that situation needs to just get on with that. We haven't got time in an emergency situation to sit back and go, so what do you think I should do at the moment? What do you think we should do in this situation? It's not going to be very helpful, and it certainly isn't going to keep people safe or make things happen quickly. So there are times we need to tell people. So in an emergency, maybe if there's only one way of doing something, we're going to need to tell people, otherwise they're not going to know to do it in that way. Maybe what else might we need to tell people? If the law says something, if there's really strict rules or regulations around something, we're going to need to tell people what to do then. Maybe when somebody's new in their role, we're going to need to. But equally, it's about recognising that we can't just stay there either. If we get into, as any of you, I'm wondering if any of you have ever had that, have you got a minute kind of person come in, they knock on your door, have you got a minute? I don't know about you, but it's never a minute, is it? It just never is. Essentially, they're like, oh, can I have half an hour of your time? Maybe they've come in for a moan. Maybe they've come in because they're not taking responsibility for what's happening. And what I do tend to find is that in those situations, the monkey just kind of gets moved from there back onto your back. And by telling people what to do, what we can be doing is perpetuating that situation. We can create more of telling people what to do and create them to come back again. We can explore that we explore that in more detail in our coaching programs, but it's something that people kind of start to notice, and it's to do with that dependency that we're creating, telling people to come back, and we'll give them the solution, we'll tell them what to do, and yeah, they'll just keep coming back for more. So when we try and shift ourselves to be further up this continuum, we're encouraging people to think for themselves. We are encouraging people to find their own solutions. We are, getting people to go, well, if I go and knock on Helen's door, what she's going to say is, well, what do you think? What do you think your solution might be? Who else could you involve in this? What have we tried previously? And so people will then start to ask themselves that question rather than keep on coming back. So sometimes when we look at this, people can say, oh, but using that ask approach, it's going to take more time. And initially, there's a chance it will be. It definitely takes more time than just going, well, what you need to do is this and this, off you pop. It definitely takes more time to ask people and get them to reflect in the short term. What I would say though is, in view of the fact that we've just said, but then they keep coming back again, in the long term, if we start to ask people questions, get people to reflect and encourage people, that then they will start doing that of their own accord. In the long term, we're going to create teams that really start to thrive, that take responsibility for things, and start to think for themselves. So in the long term, it's going to save time. So it's one of those, it's a bit like an invest to save kind of situation where we need to invest the time up front, because then we can save the time further down the line. So if you are somebody, I'd just take a moment just to reflect where you think you naturally sit on this continuum. And if you're somebody that naturally sits in that, I just like to fix things, I like to tell people what to do. That's not because you're an awful person. That's just the way that you are. But it's then saying, well, how can I stop myself when I'm about to fix it, when I'm about to tell somebody, and how can I move further up this continuum when it's appropriate to do so, when it's the right thing to be doing, and when it's going to help to develop that independence and that reflective thinking. So just something for you to ponder on there in terms of what that is and what that looks like. So we've explored a little bit around what coaching is, but let's have a little look at some of the skills. I mentioned before that a lot of these skills overlap when we look at that Venn diagram and we look at mentoring and we look at coaching. I'm not going to cover counselling in any detail now. Coaching and mentoring are far more closely related. So when we look at this, we look at some of the things that jump out, and coaching skills. First of all, we need to make sure that we do contracting. That's if we're doing formal coaching. If we're using a coaching style approach in our conversations, then we don't need to do contracting around that. Although sometimes I might just check and go, can I ask you some questions to help you to think about this a bit more, just so that they know what approach I'm using. But I wouldn't do in a very informal conversation, I wouldn't then say, and let's draw up a contract to do this. But in all of my formal coaching relationships, then obviously a contract is there. We need to build rapport. This is because if we are asking people and getting them to reflect, we need to make sure that we've got that rapport with somebody, for that to work, for them to realise that we are holding that mirror up in a helpful way, not in a critical way. We need to listen with empathy, and I'm going to talk about listening a bit more in a moment, but it's really, really key skill. And we also need to ask powerful questions. Now, if you ask a question that doesn't get much information, nothing bad happens. There's no kind of coaching lightning that comes out of the sky. But we do need to stop and think about questions and what they look like and what they feel like. You can see here in terms of mentoring, we've got mentoring skills will require things like information sharing. Now, like I said before, we're not going to do that as a coach because that's not our place. When we're having a coaching conversation, it's not our place to just share information. Advice giving and giving feedback, and signposting. So you can start to see it's a very it's more of a hands-on kind of thing with mentoring rather than just taking that reflective space. You can see there's also those overlaps though around powerful questions and listening with empathy. So they're not as far apart as you might think. And I think in terms of the feedback with mentoring, you're giving constructive feedback, like I've seen the way you do that, why don't you try it like this? Or I've noticed you're doing it this way, is there any particular reason? With coaching, you will give feedback, but in a very different way, in a more reflective kind of space. And I know that within the NHS, mentoring has been around and people are more comfortable with mentoring than coaching, just because that's where things started. But it's, and again, sometimes we hear things referred to as coaching when actually they're not. So we need to be aware of that as well. So just again, a little bit of a difference in terms of what they look like. I said we'd talk a little bit more about listening. And here we've got 5 levels of listening, and we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up. So the first level of listening is actually ignore. Don't know if anybody ever finds themselves ignoring somebody. We actually do it more than we realise. So there'll be times where we choose to ignore, and we just think, I'm just going to pretend I didn't hear that because I don't want to engage in that conversation, whatever it is that's going on. But equally, we ignore subconsciously more than we ever realise. So times when, I don't know, you're working in a busy space, be that maybe let's think about an open plan office with lots of other people around us. We need to switch off from that noise. I don't know about you, but if ever I'm in that situation, I find it really hard to focus and to concentrate. Our brains take in roughly 12 million pieces of information per second. That's a lot of information, and that's across our 5 senses. But the good news is that our subconscious brain filters out most of that information, and we are then left with between 5 and 9 pieces of information per second. This is kind of going on the general. There will be exceptions to that. So maybe somebody with autism, their brain will process more information. Not as much will get filtered out in the subconscious, so they will notice more. And so things like any other thing where somebody might experience kind of functioning differently, processing differently, they might be taking in more information per second. So we need to be aware of that. But roughly speaking, it's between 5 and 9 pieces of information. So we're ignoring the other several million bits of information that we're getting. So don't feel bad if you ignore, it's a natural state, but be aware those times when you're doing your work and somebody comes over to talk to you and you didn't even notice they were there. We just need to, don't feel bad, but notice that that's what's happening. The next one I think is worse, because it is pretend listening. And this is where we can get this down to a fine art, can't we? Where we kind of nod and we kind of make those noises. Yeah, that's good, that's lovely, that's great. And so when we are ignoring, pretend listening, we can do all of that, but it's not great. We're not listening, we're not paying attention to somebody and what's going on there. I think that's ruder than ignoring them, but we get it down to a fine art. The other thing that can happen if we are pretend listening is that we can end up getting ourselves into a sticky situation where we've ended up saying yes when we should have said no. So just something to kind of take note on with that. It always reminds me of a few years ago. I've got 2 kids, they were younger then. I'd got home from work, picked them up from childminders, got home to make tea as quickly as possible before they spontaneously combusted from hunger. And I was doing that thing, too many letters from school, looking at my phone from work, trying to cook tea, trying to see what goes on. And I suddenly realised that somebody had come into the kitchen and was chattering away to me. No idea what they were talking about. I was probably ignoring at first and then realised there was somebody there, wittering away. I'm guessing probably about Lego superheroes or Fireman Sam. That's one of my, I reckon it was one of those things. So I was doing the usual, oh, that's lovely. Oh, wow, that's amazing. Yes. And then I heard this little voice go, yes. And I thought, oh, that clearly shouldn't have been a yes. So I just went, oh, sorry, I meant no, sorry about that. And off they toddled. To this day, I've no idea what that yes was for. I have no idea what I nearly committed myself to. And I count myself lucky that actually I learned that lesson when they were little, because my now 13-year-old would take the yes and would run out the door and I wouldn't have a clue what I agreed to. So pretend listening can mean that we get ourselves into sticky situations. What have we got in the chat? I think this level happens a lot with Zooms and Teams. People pretend to be engaged and they're not. Yeah. So again, we can get, we've got that down to that, Tracy, we've got that down to a fine art as well, haven't we? Pretending on Zoom. I once noticed somebody was doing that, but they'd got glasses on. So just a shout out to those of you with glasses, because I could see what they were doing in their glasses screen and they weren't on the call with me. And I could see it all through the glasses. And I was like, how do I challenge this? But that's for another conversation. The next one is selective listening. So again, yes, we can definitely do that when we're on our Zoom and Teams calls, can't we? So selective listening, this is when we pick out bits of information that stand out to us, that are relevant, that we suddenly go, oh, they're talking about that bit now, I best listen. What can happen when we're selective listening is that we can miss a lot of really important information. So put ourselves in a position when we're talking to a colleague who's come in and said, can you help me out with this? And we're in that selective listening space, we're going to miss half of what they've said. Selective listening is where we spend the majority of our conversational space, where we are chit-chatting. So think of a time when you've got together with friends and somebody says something, and then somebody else, oh yeah, I've been to that restaurant. It does look good. Actually, there's another new restaurant that's opened here. And somebody's like, oh yeah, that was a really good place. In fact, it was there that my friend got married. Oh, so-and-so is getting married. And so all of this conversation, you're kind of going off on all kinds of tangents, and it's because it's reminding you. And I guess we could summarize selective listening as listening to respond rather than listening to understand. We're listening to respond rather than listening to understand. And there's a massive difference there, isn't there? We're waiting to get in with our bit of information, or we're waiting to tell everybody what we think about things. So it's great when we're chit-chatting, like I was saying, although you'll get to the end of the evening, go home and think, we never did finish any of those conversations. We need to meet up again. But if we really need to be listening to somebody in work or any other time, it's not great. The next one is attentive listening. So we're paying attention now. We're really starting to notice what's going on. And if we're attentive listening, we're not just picking out bits of information that we want to hear or that we're interested in. We're actually listening to everything that somebody is saying. And you might be thinking, well, how can I do more than that? There's still another level to go. And you'll notice that the top one is empathetic listening. So the difference between these two is the frame of reference that we take. The first four, we are all approaching from our own frame of reference. We are thinking from our own experience, from our own points of view, and yeah, from our own experience of the world, I guess. When we shift that to empathetic listening, we're starting to look from the other person's frame of reference. So let me take a situation where we've all been there, where you just think, oh, I could really do with somebody to chat to. Something's on your mind, something's bothering you or upsetting you. And somebody said, would you like a chat about it? And you think, do you know what? Yeah, I would. So you get your room, you sit down, you have a chat, and they go, oh, what's up? So you tell them what the matter is. And then they go, you don't need to worry about that. That's no big deal. I'll soon sort that out. They're trying to be kind, but what they're doing is putting their own frame of reference. I don't see why that's a problem. I don't see why that's bothering you. You don't want to let that upset you, but you've just told them that it is upsetting you. An empathetic approach would be, that sounds really tough, or, oh, I can see this is really upsetting you. Oh, come here, right, shall we have a little chat and see if we can figure out something we can do for you or something you can do for this to be a bit better. So by taking an empathetic approach, first of all, we're validating the other person's experience, their feelings, what's going on for them. We're really listening to what's going on for them rather than putting on our own experience or our own solutions. And so listening, I think if there's ever anything that you want to take away of how do I have a coaching conversation, listening is absolutely key. Empathetic listening can be quite tiring, can be quite exhausting. So we can't do it all of the time. If you've got your one-to-ones lined up or conversations with people throughout the day, remember that that poor person at the end of the day is not going to get your best listening ear because you're going to be pretty exhausted by then. So notice what you need in order to be in that empathetic listening space, in order to be your best at that. Because we can't do it all day, every day. It is absolutely exhausting. We need to top ourselves up. For those of you that have naturally higher levels of empathy, be aware that you're going to need extra self-care in order to look after yourself and to fill yourself up again from this. So just something to note. So yeah, some reflection points. Notice what's going on for you there. Notice how you listen and what you need in order to listen really, really well. This is a really lovely tool. It's one of my favorite coaching tools and so easy to use. It's called a life tree. So you can see here, we've got a tree with, I don't know what they are. They're potatoes, are they jelly beans? They baked beans, not 100% sure. I like to go with jelly beans because they're more colourful, aren't they? And I don't know how they got up the tree, but never mind. Let's not get bogged down in that detail. This tree is a reflection tool. And as we look at it, we can see that the characters are in different places with different expressions. And I just want you to take a moment as you look at that tree right now and think, where would you place yourself on that tree right now? Feel free to share in the chat if you'd like to, but most importantly, just take a moment of self-reflection and think, where am I on this tree? It's a really powerful tool because we can all interpret this slightly differently. In fact, let me share a story with you. It was the day before I started in this job, so 4.5 years ago, and I was on a coaching alumni day, and I was sat next to somebody who I knew from my previous role. They didn't know that much about me, but they knew what I'd been doing. They knew that I was due to start my new job, and they thought they knew more about me than they did. Anyway, on this alumni day, we were using a life tree in order to check in with one another. And I was on a table of, I don't know, 4 or 5 people, something like that. And this chap sat next to me said, oh, he said, Helen, we know where you'll be on the tree, don't we? Do we? Well, I do. How do you know? I just went, oh, right, okay, do enlighten me. And he said, I think that you would be that one right at the top. Can you see the one with hands on hips stood right at the top of the tree? He said, you're going to be that one. He said, because you're starting your new job and you've done this and you've done that. He said, you're winning and it's really good, and that's where you are on the tree. And proceeded for about 5 minutes to tell me why that's where I was on the tree, bearing in mind we're all coaches. So I said, okay, I let him finish. And then I said, that's really interesting that you think that. That isn't where I would put myself on the tree. And everybody else kind of looked at me, where would you put yourself, Helen? And actually at the time, where did I put myself? I put myself, can you see on the right hand side, there's one giving another one a piggyback, and one stood next to them. And I'd put myself there because actually I was looking forward to being part of a team again. I'd previously been self-employed, been working freelance, and so I was looking forward to being part of a team again, coming back together, supporting one another, giving each other a little bit of a piggyback when we needed it, looking out for each other, holding each other onto the tree. I was really looking forward to that, and that's where I put myself. And it made me really recognize why, if we're using this as a coaching tool, as a check-in tool with somebody, be open-minded. Actually, it doesn't matter where somebody puts themselves. What matters is the reason behind that. And we can learn so much in terms of why somebody has put themselves where they have on the tree, what's going on for that person. And what's happening for them. So as a check-in, this is really, really good. You can be quite specific with it as well and say, in terms of your role, where do you feel that you are, or where would you like to be with work, and what would that look like? What would it take to get there? So you can think of lots of different kind of situations and scenarios and get people to reflect on it in that way, and they'll share that. What it also enables us to do is if I just walked into somebody and said, tell me how you're feeling, be like, oh, that's a bit full on. But if you say, where are you on the tree, we find out how people are feeling just based on where they are and why they are there and what's happening for them. So again, we find out feelings for people, we find out situations, we find out what's going on, and we'll find out far more information than asking those direct questions, because people can then use this and use that metaphor in order to do that. So really good in terms of how we have those conversations. So feel free to use something like this as a check-in with somebody, or a team check-in. That's another lovely way to use it in terms of team coaching as well. So lots of different uses for this. It really does remain one of my absolute favorites in order to just hear how people are. I also use it for myself as well in terms of a bit of a self check-in. Where would I put myself right now on the tree? And we'll move throughout the day. We can be in different places throughout the day. We don't stay in the same place, and depending on different situations and different areas of our life as well. So yeah, really lovely tool to be able to use. What I would like to share with you is that for the HPMA North Academy, we have got coming up this in much more detail. We've got a programme called Curious Conversations, and it is made up of four half day, I think they're 2 hours, can't remember off the top of my head, 4 2-hour sessions. In order to, there might be 3 hours, in order to explore Curious Conversations further. This is just the very beginning of it. This is just a little flavour. In terms of that, you will look at this in much more detail, go into coaching in more detail, think about some of those experiences that you've had, be able to look a little bit around what's happening for you as maybe as a leader, as a colleague, maybe in terms of your progress and the skills that you've got. So this programme gives you an opportunity to be able to do that. Tracy, I've just spotted that. Is there something that you'd like to add?
Yeah, just to say that we're really excited about running this, obviously in partnership with Boo and with yourself, Helen. As you said, it's for HPMA branches that are under the umbrella of the North Academy on this first occasion. So it's for those of you that are in the Northwest, those of you that are in Yorkshire and Humber, and those of you that are in the North East and Cumbria. The programmes are going to start early in the new year, and information is going to be coming out in the next few weeks as to how you can be nominated for the programme. For colleagues that are joining us from other parts of the 4 nations, please don't worry. This is just the first tranche, and we will be doing it and make it more available. Yes, so I can see Kelly, you're saying, will it be offered and extended to the south and to London? Yes, most certainly. I anticipate that the evaluations will be very, very successful, and it'll be something that will become part of a broader and wider programme. But we're just going to start it off in the north, as Helen said. So more details to come. All right, then. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tracy. So are people just waiting for you to send those details out to them so that if they're based in North?
Yeah, absolutely. Colleagues may have seen from the North Academy that we've been actively recruiting to a business partner programme over the last month. So we don't want to overwhelm and deluge organisations with too many things at one time. So we're going to leave it a couple of weeks and then information will be coming out. And that will come out through mails and also on social media and on the website.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tracy, for sharing that. So those of you that are looking at this, and because this is the fastest whistle stop tour ever in terms of what coaching is, it's just a tiny little taster. So for those of you that are looking at this thinking, I want to find out a little bit more about this, I'd like to know what's happening, then for those of you that are in the north at the moment, as we said, it will be looking at how, first of all, how well does it work, how well does it go, and looking at whether there's possibilities to roll that out in other areas. So yeah, just keep a lookout for it. But it's and I guess if you're in a different area, Tracy, probably don't say that. If you're in a different area, then say I would be interested if there was an opportunity, because I guess that's helpful in terms of a measure for whether this is something that people would like to find out more about as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Helen. I mean, if people want to contact Joe or I, and obviously we can lobby on a wider scale as well. We will actually in November be making available to all members across the 4 nations our learning needs analysis, and the results from our learning needs analysis will inform, well, it'll inform a whole host of things really. It'll inform what we do on our national programme, so an example like this of things that we do on the national programme, but it'll also inform things at branch level. So what local areas will pick up, and then in the north and in London and the south, it'll also inform matters that the academies will pick up as well. So it's really important. Keep your eyes out for the learning needs opportunity or the learning needs analysis opportunity, and please do complete it. And obviously Joe and I will then be heavily scrutinising that and informing the programme for the forthcoming year.
That's fabulous. Thanks, Tracy. And what a great opportunity, because it's really important that, and it fits in with coaching really, thinking about taking that time to reflect and go, what else do I want to learn? What else do I need? What else is going to help me to be even better at my job, or help me to be able to progress in the way that I want to progress? So as a coach, I would certainly encourage you all to look out for that and complete that, because otherwise you can't get the opportunities that you want, can you? So yeah, go for it. As I say, in Curious Conversations, in the programs that we're rolling out, the numbers will be much smaller as well. As I say, this is just a little flavour of it this morning. This afternoon. We're in the afternoon already, aren't we? Just a little flavour of it, and just a taster of what kind of things we'd explore, and what kind of things we'd think about. And there's also practice there as well, in order to put this stuff into practice. So let me give you a little bit of a reminder as we've gone through. So in terms of, if you're looking at this and thinking, oh my goodness, how do I even have a coaching conversation? What does that look like? And what does that feel like? One of the first things, and one of the most important things, is that listening with empathy, really taking time to notice what the person's saying. And listening is much broader than just the words that they're saying. Take notice of their body language, or what else might be going on, what other signals there are. And sometimes it might be that you're doing that online. It can be a little bit more challenging, but as we pointed out, as Tracy pointed out, you know, we can still notice what's going on. Are people engaging? We can clock when people are not listening, when it's online as well. So think about what you need more than what the other person needs. What do you need to listen with empathy? How can you create that space for you to be able to listen? Think about when you are having that conversation with somebody, can you just put your laptop away? Can you go into another room? Can you just cut back the noise in order to be there for somebody? So listen with empathy is always the starting point. Empathy is just so powerful and so necessary when we're looking at workplaces and making the time for people. Think about how you flex your leadership style to meet the needs of others. Remember that continuum, and that we have a choice whether we tell people what to do or whether we ask them questions in order to help them to develop that reflection and that solving their own problems, really. But we need to meet people where they're at. We can't force somebody to be in a different place, and we need to be flexible. And even the same person can need us to be in a different place at a different time, depending what's going on. So as a leader, it's really, really hard, but we need to flex our style to meet the needs. Practice self-care and self-compassion is so important. If we are going to be having coaching conversations, we need to be okay ourselves. And I've just spotted something in the chat. Kelly's put, can I recommend any tools or models to practice self-care and self-compassion in a coaching context? Gosh, Kelly, that is a massive question. It's a whole webinar in itself and beyond. That's okay. No, I like it when people ask questions. Yes, I can, but the ones that are coming into my mind are ones that we use within our training. In terms of self-compassion, I particularly like the work of Kristin Neff and Christopher Germer, and they have created a book called, I'm not in my office, so I don't know where the resources are in here, they're downstairs. They have got a book, and it's the Self-Compassion book. If you type in Kristin Neff and self-compassion, it will take you to their website, and I really like their work around self-compassion, and they break self-compassion down to 3 key areas: around connecting with other humans, around being kind to yourself, and around mindfulness as well, bringing yourself back to the moment. So I love their work around that. We have a whole webinar around and workshop that we've created around inner critic and self-compassion, because actually that's what's going on for people, is it's their inner critic has been triggered and is going really, really loud, and self-compassion's the answer to that. I can't do it justice in the amount of time we've got here. Self-care, I would say in coaching context, I always say to people, what's one tiny thing that you can do to look after yourself today? Self-care coaching is, again, a whole massive machine of things, but just just as simple as that, whether you've got 10 minutes with somebody, 5 minutes with somebody, walking down the corridor and somebody's like, I'm so stressed right now, I really can't cope today. Just go, breathe. Do me a favor. What's one thing that you can do for yourself today? You need to look after you, else you can't look after other people. And we see that time and time again. Yeah, I'm more than happy to do that for the future. That would be amazing. Ask for feedback. So if you are having coaching conversations, if this is something totally new for you, ask people how it felt for them. If you're kind of looking at this and thinking, oh, I could catch the coaching bug, and you're thinking, I want to do more of coaching, then ask for feedback, see how you're getting on, see how helpful it is for other people, because it will boost your confidence and help you know maybe what wasn't so helpful for somebody. But remember, everybody's an individual. So what's helpful for one person isn't for another. And I know that through my coaching clients, and I'll think, oh, well, that didn't work. And then other times I'll be like, that worked amazingly well. Everybody's different, aren't they? Seek out coaching opportunities. If it's something that you're thinking, yeah, this sounds interesting, look for those opportunities to have those coaching conversations with other people, and test it out. Practice with each other. Maybe you have joined this webinar with a colleague, and maybe it's something that you're just exploring. Try practicing with each other and helping each other to find those solutions to your own problems. That can be really hard if you work closely together, because you almost know too much. I often find it easier to coach people that I don't know their situation, or I'm purely there as a coach. But when I'm coaching maybe people within my team, I've got a one-to-one with somebody, and I think, right, this is, you know, obviously within our organisation, we always try and use a coaching approach where possible. That's part of being a team of coaches. That can get a little bit of annoying. I know with some of my team, if I'm using that approach, and sometimes Patty won't mind me using her as an example, she'll be like, Helen, can you just tell me what to do? Because I'm really not sure. Oh, right. Yeah. Sorry about that. Of course. Yeah. So recognizing that if you are a bit of a natural born coach, knowing that sometimes people do just need us to tell them, and we might step into that space when it's actually really not very helpful. So look for those opportunities, ask for feedback, practice. Coaching gets easier the more that we practice it, the more that we try it out, and the more that we get that feedback. So notice what is going on. The most important bit of this list for you to take away is for you to practice that self-care, looking after yourself. And I'm going to throw that challenge out to you that I've just said that I do a lot. I want to challenge you to think of what's one good thing that you are going to do to look after yourself today. It can be tiny, it can be, I'm going to go and make that cup of tea and I'm going to drink it whilst it's hot, to much longer. When I get home, I'm going to light those candles and I'm going to relax in the bath, or I'm going to go for that walk, or whatever it might be. Look after yourself, because all of the things that we've talked about in this webinar, whether that's listening, whether that's asking great questions, whether that's all of checking in with people, we can only do that if we are okay ourselves. And that is the underpinning thing that we need. If you've got any other questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. We have got a couple of minutes left if anybody wants anything, and then pop them in there. I do like a good question. But other than that, that brings us to the end of the content for today. Feel free, as I've said, to join us on social media, where we share more tips and bits of information and what's going on. So yeah, feel free to get in touch with us. But thank you so much for prioritising your time today to think, how can I even start to have a coaching conversation? What does that look like? And what does that feel like? But thank you, and thank you for your contributions as well. Look after yourselves and take care.
Helen, thank you enormously on behalf of everybody who's on the call, and HPMA as well. It's great that we've addressed this today, but certainly, you know, you've sown a few seeds actually that Joe and I will pick up on, and look at what else we can do in the future. So thank you everybody for joining us. Have a great rest of the afternoon, and please go ahead and experiment. That's what I would say. All right then, take care everyone. Thanks again.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.